This study overviews data integration technologies based upon a set of requirements and analysis done by Idealnet, a Pennsylvania-based consultant, analyst, and integration firm. This study will be focused on ETL versus cloud-based data integration and the trade-offs and key requirements associated with such activities. In terms of agenda, we'll overview Idealnet, the study, its background and drivers, the state of the data integration market, customer challenges, and the various comparison categories that were deemed appropriate. Most important are the conclusions for this study. ETL and its leadership, still owned by Informatica, the open source contenders, and a new and interesting vendor, Queplix, takes front and center stage for multi-point connectivity. Idealnet Systems was formed in 1994 to provide enterprise software and consulting, reformed as Idealnet Incorporated in 2002, which absorbed Ideal Systems, and provides expert business and technical consulting services to life sciences and financial institution customers. Many clients across top-tier pharmaceutical companies, banks, commercial banks, biotech, medical device, with areas of expertise spanning commercial and regulatory contracting, finance, M&A support, and much more. The members of the Idealnet team have done hands-on application development and customization and have deployed master data management and application integration in multiple sites across the United States. They're based in the East Coast and Philadelphia and support clients around the world. There are many Idealnet customers. Please refer to the Idealnet website, idealnetinc.com, to learn more about the company and to get a free copy of the study. In terms of background and drivers, customer issues have been growing and the complexity is increasing. There are just more and more applications that are springing up in the enterprise, whether it be mid-sized or large, and bridging the gaps between these applications is becoming critical. The number of bridges that customers are sprouting is growing in dimensions, and yet each of these bridges is laid one at a time. A to B, B to C, and C to D. The need for unifying key data across these many applications in areas like customer, product, human relations, and vendor data is growing. And all of this is compounded by the fact that on-premise and cloud deployment are very different kinds of models. Cloud is coming to large enterprise with the right security as Salesforce leads the way. Compliance clouds these issues for public companies, and ETL makes it more difficult. And as always, the return on investment with a successful integration is significant enough so that users are going forward and tackling and challenging these issues towards success. There's a technology curve that Idealnet observed was visible across the industry. And the technology that many customers are using, even as far back as 1985, is still the predominant technology in use today, which is ETL. It's mostly about bridging relational applications, manual discovery, and building pipes from point A to point B and from point B to point C. In approximately 2000, the second generation of ETL capability came about, where either very early clouds or more likely GUI-based ETL arrived at the market. And while these were deemed to be non-programmatic interfaces, the fact is that you have to be a programmer to use them to make any sense out of them and certainly to debug them. It's ETL with a front end, but under the covers, it's still the same technology. There was some packaging of MDM hubs and some new cloud app connectors, but fundamentally, not a big change in underlying platforms. Even though these technologies, first and second generation, or older technologies, these still predominate the landscape. Most customers are using ETL technology, which has a significant lineage and has not changed much in many years. Right around 2010, we witnessed the emergence of the persistent metadata server for data integration. Most of these are powered by data virtualization. There's an automation of a significant number of tasks, a reduction in effort to deploy, and an equal and open playing field for technologies such as relational object XML or even NoSQL. This is a new world. It offers some advantages, and there are application areas where it seems to fit very well. It's adapted both to the cloud and on-premise, and this gives customers maximum flexibility in meeting their needs today and into the future. Terminology that we find out there in the market really varies considerably. ETL, extract, transform, and load, is the most consistently used term. Terms like data integration, enterprise application integration, and enterprise information integration all compete for mind share, though EII has certainly disappeared from the market. Enterprise service buses are out there. And then data virtualization, both the successor, legacy data virtualization to EII, and in its new form, advanced data virtualization, which is wrapped around a different set of constructs. But data virtualization has entered the market and represents another significant integration technology set. Data alignment, data synchronization, and even data harmonization abound as terms. And at the high end of the integration spectrum, master data management and virtual master data management have also emerged. There's a lot to understand, a lot to talk about. Technology soup, certainly in the cloud, where integration as a service, information as a service, and integration platform as a service all seem to describe perhaps more or less the same thing. Many analysts have important viewpoints on this market, and some of them spend much more time even than Idealnet understanding the intricacies of these markets. But what you can see is that several $1 billion are being spent a year on all the different types of integration. And perhaps as you consider data quality to be part of this mix, this number will start to grow even larger than most of us see. Part and parcel to this integration market is the services market. For every dollar that's spent on a piece of software right now, we believe that $2 to $3 or $4 is spent on integration services. So what appears to be a multi-billion-dollar market for software may be in fact $5 to $10 billion when you add all of the services and consulting support that get wrapped around it, or even more when you consider where MDM may go. These are the hidden size parameters to the market, but this is the symptom by which we manifest the market size most clearly. For data integration, the amount of professional services required seems disproportionately higher than for many other application deployment areas. The customization and services required seem far more significant than the cost of the software. This is a source of delay, risk, and cost overrun for clients, and something that should be looked at closely. Gartner believes that integration platform as a service, or a cloud-based integration offering, will be used by perhaps a little more than 1/3 of all organizations, large and mid-size, by 2016, a very significant statement. ESG believes that data integration platforms must be able to integrate various types of data in the cloud. And Forrester has out and out stated that integration by ETL creates data quality problems and delays information delivery. We agree with Forrester, but there are certain classes of ETL delivery where ETL is the right fit. It fits the class of problem nicely. And because of its longevity in the market, the delivery paradigm for how to get it to work effectively and efficiently is well understood by many of the users out there. So we see for the right kinds of applications, we believe that ETL is an excellent fit, and we'll talk about that later. In terms of business applications, there are many things that we need to look at. Key parameters such as, is it a data migration, one-time movement? Is it a data integration, a regular movement, whether synchronized, whether triggered, whether done on a scheduled basis? Is it in support of a BI domain build-out? Is it in support of building out a data warehouse? Or is it in support of master data management deployment? All of these things really affect your choice of tools. One size does not fit all. Cloud and object applications don't necessarily fit well with ETL applications, even when the connectors are there and in place. In terms of best practice, discovery and understanding the structure of your data is key. We encourage you to get a metadata discovery tool and clearly work to understand the data sources, the amount of data that you have to move, and the keys that will make this work. And how would you determine those keys? And how will you then solve the data quality issues that you have to solve to get this data integrated? In terms of platform deployment, you have many choices now: on-premise, cloud, both public and private, or on-premise or near-premise, where software as a service gives you the same economic model, perhaps, or close to the economic model of cloud. ETL tools are not well designed for cloud models or software deployment. They are perhaps best for on-premise. An ETL pipe, is a connection point that assumes you're privileged and entitled to be touching the data on both ends, and there's really no security mechanism other than protecting the data in flight. There are other technologies such as QCloud that will support more sophisticated security models and LDAP, but you need to be aware of these and you need to think about this up front before you move forward because you won't find these benefits in most ETL deployments. So understand where your architectural horizon needs to take you. And if it's a far enough field, you're going to have to make the decision early on that ETL not only won't help you, but in fact may hold you back. Other key parameters are connectivity to data sources. How are you going to connect to application programs? If you have SAP, it's very specific to the version of SAP you have. How is that going to be done? Are there other standards like flat file, EDI, things like that? Will you be connecting directly to the database in a custom application and doing inserts and updates? All of these are very, very important for you to understand. Programming to proprietary vendor APIs requires very extensive and specific skills and can substantially increase the cost of your project. This goes under the category of caution, and you need to view this as a red flag. If you don't understand the major application APIs, it's going to dramatically increase the effort that you will find. You need to stick with SOA. You need to go with the standards. If your vendor doesn't do this, run, don't walk from that vendor. If they try to charge you optionally for SOA compliance, that's another area where a red flag should abound. Little things like, how will you know if there are custom fields in your applications? If the vendor tools discover this automatically and adapt to it, that's a great thing. But if you have to know that, then you're back in manual discovery, lots of long meetings, and those things are not conducive to a tightly managed project and minimization of risk. The more custom fields that you have to determine manually, the more difficult the application development will be for you. Finally, note that cloud-based applications are object-oriented. They are not relational, and you need to make sure that your tool set supports objects in the cloud, not just relational tables on-premise. For best practices, again, metadata discovery tools will just save you so much work, and then talk with the vendors about the specific interfaces that you need. Not every vendor has every interface or ever will. Understand their strategy to add it, ask them to do it, and ask them to support it. In terms of synchronization, you also need to map your requirements to the vendor tool set. There are probably 3 ways that synchronization is affected. Real time, where you're driving from triggers inserted in a database. This requires that the database administrator approve and support your process. Putting triggers into a major source application database is not desirable and is generally frowned upon. Near time, where you're mapping to an updated index of perhaps date of last update for a row or record, and then harmonizing or synchronizing the data after that, and a batch where you're programming regular updates, whether they be every 10 minutes or hourly or in a night run. All of these things may be important to you depending on your application, and you may need a mix of these update cycles based upon the different constituents you have in your organization. Recognize that generally real-time relates to ACID transactions. You're in a transaction flow, and this is a very different problem than building out customer data alignment or master data alignment. It's a different kind of application, and again, recognize it's a different set of problems. Perhaps, the best practice, I think, is, to just take a lightweight touch to how you update your data. Some of the newer technologies like advanced data virtualization don't require that you load a whole row every time something changes in that row or that record. Basically, you can change just the field and synchronize just that field into the other data set. And that makes the system faster, produces a lighter weight touch, eliminates the need for massive caching. So you've really got to understand what these new technologies will do and then fit it to the problem that you have. Transformation is all about when you've got 2 data components, one is a source and one is a destination, and now you need to move from point A to point B. You've got to transform the data into a form that is normalized and correct for the destination system. And you have to have tools to do this. Now, certainly ETL is programmable. Some of the more modern tools, QCloud in particular is a favorite. For this presentation, it doesn't require any programming and uses an Excel-like language to affect the transforms. But whatever you do, you need to understand the power of the tool set and map it to the capabilities of your team. First and second generation products, they're great for programmers. ETL teams are fairly smart and nimble. The business users don't mix well at all with them. If you want to work with business users, you're probably going to need a third generation tool that doesn't require programming and doesn't build itself on an ETL architecture. But that's up to you to discover. And you need to figure out what will fit the needs of the organization best. Data movement is ultimately the name of the game, and the legacy of ETL came out of loading the data warehouse. So it's very good at bulk data movement. It's designed to move files. It moves them fast. It's got lots of caching. It does all the error handling and checking, and will do a super job for you. But it's certainly not ideal when you want to map records between Salesforce and NetSuite or Salesforce and SAP. It's probably the wrong thing to use most of the time for that kind of application. So really look at what you're doing and understand where it fits. For test and development and overall operations, you've got to recognize that ETL is mostly a software instance. It's not really part of a data center. It's just an instance running in one of your servers. Some of the new components of advanced data virtualization come in on-premise server formats that fit into your operational environment and do all the things that a standalone device can do. Or you can get them in the cloud and get all that same functionality. But ask the questions, how are you going to flow from test and development into production? How are you going to back up? How are you going to undo 1,800 bad transactions that roll over through your integration? How are you going to automate the backup and recovery from that? How are you going to integrate things with LDAP? You have 10 programmers that are integrating 10 different apps for MDM, and they've all got different sets of permissions to touch various applications. How are you going to map their permissions, the way you do with LDAP elsewhere in your organization, to this kind of development? ETL doesn't do it. There are ways to do it. So understand those approaches. Data modeling becomes very, very, very key. You need to know the structure of your data. Probably half of all your effort, 40 to 50%, will be discovering the structure of your data, documenting it, understanding how to map different data sources together, and then having a concept for how the transforms need to get this done. This is before you code a single line. Will you have a data dictionary where you can store this? How will it be documented? Is it emails and meetings, or is it in spreadsheets? There are tools out there, modern third generation tools, that build all of this in and automate it. Understand how these things work, and certainly give yourself the benefit of the doubt to know what you're gaining or losing by not going with a third generation tool. First and second generation tools can get the job done, but your labor efforts are likely to be far more significant, 2 to 3 times the time programming as opposed to software license fees. So the user should beware. Once again, best practice is get a metadata discovery tool. It just makes your life so much easier and cuts down your labor costs significantly. Data quality and data governance are often left out of the equation for data integration, and our study has shown us that data quality is the single biggest issue for data integration consistently. The data integration is architected, all of the fields are mapped, semantics are understood, and when the first run is done on a pre-production basis, you end up with 4,000 rows of things that would not synchronize because the keys didn't match, or because in one system it said Ford Motor Company and the other it said the Ford Motor Company. These are the problems that derail most data integration projects. It's all about data quality and normalization, and yet most of the vendors that are involved with data integration don't get within 100 yards of those problems. They don't want to solve them. So ask your vendor what they're going to do about data quality. Ask your vendor how they're going to implement your data governance, and make sure that you get the answers that will produce a turnkey delivered result for you. When you split the data quality component of your deliverable up separately from the data integration component, you become the general contractor, and woe be unto you when those things don't work out, because you're the one that's going to have to solve them. We believe that the market for data quality is converging with the market for data integration, and if you're looking forward, you should see a convergence of the tool sets. You should see that you're buying a tool set that does both, and that's what you need to be successful. Architecture and standards vary, but you've got to look for the basic compliance with SOA, with JDBC, with ODBC.NET and web services. Those are things you need from any vendor. You can have standalone, you can have networked, But without those standards, you're not going to have the right pieces to make changes later. As you grow, if you see a large deployment, ETL is fundamentally a pipe-oriented architecture. It bridges A to B and B to C. Even when it's structured into an MDM type of hub arrangement, you're fundamentally programming each link yourself. The hub is no more nor less than a quasi-data mart in the middle, and you have to do the work. And so, understand architecturally what you're getting. There are hub and spoke persistent metadata servers out there. They're a fairly new invention, but they really changed the face of data integration, and they will forge a permanent place in IT infrastructure and architecture over the next few years. The predominant vendor story is one of, application servers. One day they didn't exist, the next day they became standard infrastructure. So understand your architecture today and where you need to go over the next 2 or 3 years. In terms of conclusions, ETL really brought out the leader of the pack, Informatica. Informatica has a very strong traditional ETL offering and really defines the best of the best for ETL delivery. Now, ETL is optimized for bulk file delivery. It's a legacy technology, but Informatica is a strong legacy vendor. And if you're going to buy ETL, you should get it from a vendor with strong capabilities and support. Talend and Pentaho are excellent open source alternatives and include somewhat integrated BI offerings that go along hand in hand to make this work. But recognize that ETL doesn't scale. You're building all of these pipes yourself. And so if you choose not to go with the excellence offered by Informatica, there are other technology approaches. We found that in this study, Idealnet found that the Queplix technology was a very strong third-generation product. It really merited your review. The data virtualization technologies are going to change the face of data integration. When you have to integrate 3 or 4 or more sources, the capability that advanced data virtualization offers is very, very substantial and really changes the mix of risk and cost and time to implementation. You should be able to reduce your costs 50%, maybe 75% or even more. So, understand what data virtualization can do in an integration engine, understand what a persistent metadata server is, and if you've made a choice that you don't need bulk file transfer, you do want to go with ETL, then Queplix as a new and innovative vendor is a great solution potentially for you. Queplix has sponsored this study in part based upon our focus and interest in their technology, and you can go to their website and find out more about what they have to offer. You can also get the study, the written report, from the Idealnet website, www.idealnetinc.com, and then it's the Idealnet analysis of data integration technologies. I believe there's also a link from the Queplix homepage, and quite a few blogs have already listed the study. Here you can see in closing some of the tables of comparison that we covered that you can get in the report. And you can see ETL products, and Queplix kind of stood out as a persistent metadata server, was sufficiently innovative and new that we broke it out into a separate category. You can look to see all the different pieces here, just at the 1,000-foot view, whether it's connectivity, whether it's the API interface, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot to look at and understand in the study. Once again, Idealnet is pleased to have this study online at www.idealnetinc.com. Please come to the site and download a free copy. Email us and tell us about your application.